But we're going to talk to Emmanuel, him from Texas, who wants to talk about atheism being an immoral ideology. Tell us more about that, Emmanuel. What is your argument?
What are you guys?
Hello?
Hello? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can
Yes,
hear
we can
you.
hear
Yep.
Emmanuel.
Oh yeah. Well, a lot of times I've tried to call in the transatlantic show, but Jimmy Snow has banned me, so I'm not sure if I could call again. But like my basic idea is in the atheism ideology. Since there is no deity, how do you come up with like ethical values? Because I feel like in the atheism ideology, we don't have like an ultimate purpose, which is
How do you come up with
prescriptive.
them in your theistic ideology?
Well, in the theistic, for example, if you go to the specific theistic ideology that I follow, I believe that deep in our hearts there's a law written by God, so we know what things are wrong or what things are true. Um, but if there is no deity, I define atheism as a lack of belief in a deity. That's how I think it.
Do
Maybe you
people
have a
in
different definition.
do people
Okay.
Emmanuel, and do people in your theistic ideology have different opinions of what that moral system entails?
Well, we're very dogmatic. Like the denomination that I'm affiliated with is very dogmatic. So I don't think there's a basic difference between I and someone who
But you've
maybe
just
I'll
said something
illustrate
very,
that.
very interesting there, Emmanuel. You've just said in your denomination, which suggests that there are other denominations under that theistic system that you belong to. Are there
Well,
other denominations which have different opinions?
yeah, I mean there are I'm Pentecostal, and there are Pentecostal which are uh, for example, I consider myself as a progressive Calvinistic Pentecostal. Most Pentecostals have Armenian view. They believe that we have free will. Well, I don't believe there is free will. So there's
Well,
So
then why are you
in
calling us?
uh,
in the
If there's no
theistic
free will, if there's no free will, then like, do you think that your words are going to make any difference to us?
well in for example, like I believe that uh, the word has to be taught and preached. The fullness of the gospel has to be preached, even to the people who are elected. So, the
So
scripture says in
even
Romans 10 that there has. Okay.
Emmanuel, even within your own theistic system, there are people
Okay.
who have different opinions on what ethical guidelines or ethical or moral values are. So how is it that you can say that on one hand, and on the other hand say that God has written this on everybody's hearts? Surely this isn't the case. This is demonstrated by the fact that even other people who follow your own religion don't agree with you on those moral systems.
It's just that the way we interpret, we use the same tool. We both believe in Scripture is the ultimate authority, and it's the Word of God. We believe in the Apostles' doctrine. But the thing is, we interpret those doctrines very differently. For example, I believe that unless your heart is regenerated, it's impossible for you to have salvation. Um,
So, Emmanuel,
most
how
the
how
okay.
do I know yours is correct?
Well, all you have to do is just study the New Testament and find out that
But I
everything that I'm
did
saying
study,
is accurate.
but I did study the New Testament, and I mean, first of all, I wasn't Pentecostal. I was probably non-denominational evangelical.
I was not
But
Pentecostal either. I was Mennonite, by
but
the way.
no, but and then now I read more of the New Testament, and I became an atheist. So I studied it pretty intensely, and it was in a lot of the reading that I kind of learned. Hey, I don't have any good reason to believe that my view on this is correct. And like going back to like needing a deity or needing religion to be a moral person, like again, like if we have different religions, even going beyond different denominations, different religions with different views on what is moral, then does having a deity mean that you're going to be moral if they're all different, right?
Well, we are all immoral and wicked, even if we believe in God or not. We are immoral from birth. So I do recognize that even though you believe in God, it's just a process till you die, and you meet the Lord Jesus and have a glorified
But
body.
how?
Until then, okay. I'm sorry.
But how? So, like, if I have you, who's a Pentecostal Christian, and I have a Muslim, we're using this example a lot today, and both of you believe that you're doing the thing that is the most moral and more ethical. How do I know which one of you is right?
Just compare what I say and what that guy say, and you'll see that my epistemology and doctrine and thoughts are more consistent with the apostle teaching than.
Well, but I don't care. I don't care. You're just going back to more consistent with the apostle's teaching doesn't make that more true than what the Muslim said. Like, because the Muslim's going to say, well, yeah, but what I'm saying is more consistent with what Muhammad said. So, right? Because they're just going to go back to, you just went back to your own book. But how do I know which one of your books is telling me the truth about what is moral?
Oh, okay. Can I just throw this out there? So Muslims does not believe that God could be manifested in the flesh. So
that doesn't matter for what the point is. The point is, I have two people in front of me that say that their system is the most moral and the most ethical, and that you cannot be moral unless you have their system. How do I know that you're right and the Muslim is not?
Well, I didn't grow up in America, so I know Islam. People who teach Islam, it was like more than 40% of my country's population is Islam. You could tell that it's ancient mythology. It doesn't have any bearing truth or fact.
Yeah, I think but I say the same thing about your religion. Your religion is also an ancient mythology that doesn't have a lot of truth to it. So you can't just go back to that argument. You have to tell me, why is yours true? Bring evidence to me that says this one is true because reason. Right? And even if you disproved every other religion on earth, that does not make yours true. Like, you have to still bring your arguments to the table of why is yours correct.
Emmanuel, do you think that this internal knowledge we have about what is morally right and wrong, do you think that is consistent with what God instructs people to do and does himself in the Bible?
Well, I don't think it is consistent because we are born in a wicked world, so our heart and mind is corrupted. That's why.
But I'm not talking about the corruption. I'm talking about the statement you made at the start of the call, that we all intrinsically have that knowledge of what is right and wrong within us, whether we act on it or not. Do you think that intrinsic knowledge that of good and bad are consistent with what God instructs and does himself in the Bible?
Very much so, because even though we can't act upon those moral values, we still know what is right or wrong. And that's
so. Would you suggest then, based on that? I'm sorry for interrupting you. I just want to make a follow-up point. Okay. Would you suggest that God commanding to go and slaughter a whole people, men, women, and children, apart from the virgin girls, who we should keep as spoils of war and take our share of, do you think that is a morally good thing to do?
No, I don't think that's an ethical thing to do. I think that the scriptures have different commandments.
So in fact, when I previously asked you, Emmanuel, if you thought that internal goodness and badness was consistent with God's actions and instructions. You don't actually think that, because you've just told me that that's now not moral.
What I'm saying is, for human to make judgment upon other people, I think those ideas are only found in the Old Covenant, which doesn't apply to the New Covenant church.
But was
God's
that the
morality
same?
changes over
Yeah.
time? Sorry, Ben.
Oh, I was just gonna say that, like, so, but that's the same God, right? It's the same deity that did that.
No. It's the same, but I could be the same person and give you different instruction at different times. I could give you different agreements with you.
So you're saying that it was okay. So you're saying it was okay that God did that in the Old Testament.
Like, you have to give me a specific. Are you talking about 1 Samuel?
No, I'm talking about
the
Numbers
specifics.
31. I'm talking about Numbers 31, where God specifically.
Okay, number 31 is a slavery law where they keep the virgin girls. Basically, when the Israelites
Numbers 31 is the
were
example where God commands
instructed,
commands
but
Moses.
they still kept a certain people, right? Which means they basically made them slaves, right?
They committed genocide of a people and kept slaves. They did both of those things.
Being kept slaves. So.
And they committed. You're glossing over the genocide part. Like, they committed genocide.
Yeah. Do you know what God's reason was for sending people to slaughter those people?
Absolutely, because they were idol worshippers, right?
So,
Yeah.
okay, so hold on. So Emmanuel. Okay, so this is the argument that you just said. Okay, and let me ask you this very clearly. Do you think people who worship idols deserve to be slaughtered?
Actually, we all deserve to be slaughtered, including people who worship idols. That's why God had to kill everyone, the flesh story, right? We all deserve that.
So you just said it is okay to commit genocide against people who worship idols.
I did not say.
That's what God did. That is specifically the story, though. God commanded his people to go commit genocide against people who worship idols. Is that not the story?
Well, that's the story, but I'm not God. It was like,
right. But do you think? But do you believe? Hold on. Let me walk you through this. Because it seems like you're not understanding the argument that you're agreeing with. Okay, so you said that it is okay for God to command these people to kill idol worshipers. And you also said that this God is the same God that you worship. This is the same God from the Old Testament and the New Testament. So is God moral? Is God ethical for telling people to commit genocide?
Genocide is never okay, by the way. I'm not saying genocide.
Okay, so genocide's never okay. Okay, so then why was it okay that God did it?
Because before Christ's sacrifice, we all were under the law, which we are deserving of death. So that's why you see in Leviticus.
Do you not see how your argument is
irrelevant?
Your argument is totally inconsistent, because on the one hand, you said genocide is never okay. And then you said, well, it's okay in these circumstances. So you have admitted that you think genocide is okay under certain circumstances.
No. I'm not saying.
So it wasn't okay that God commanded the Israelites to kill people. Which is it? Is genocide okay or is it not okay, Emmanuel? You have to pick one. You cannot be in both camps here.
Let me just paraphrase what Ben is asking you. Is God good, or is he a very, very naughty boy? That's what we're asking you.
Okay, let me say it's not okay, right? It's not okay.
Okay. So then why was it okay? So you said it's not okay. So in saying that, you would have to then, if you're consistent in your argument, you'd have to say that what God did in the Old Testament was wrong. You'd have to say that.
No, because here's.
So you think genocide is okay under certain circumstances? You think genocide is okay?
No.
Do you not see? You're contradicting yourself, and I don't think we're getting anywhere with you.
Emmanuel, let us remind ourselves that the reason we're going down this route is you said our internal knowledge of good and right that comes from God is consistent with God's actions and instructions in the Old Testament, in the Bible. That's why we're going down this route. So you specifically made the claim that our internal knowledge of right and wrong is consistent with God's instructions and actions. God's instructions in the Old Testament are that people should go out and slaughter people for idol worship and keep the virgin girls of those people for themselves. They are his instructions. So, based on your own argument, you are telling us that our internal knowledge of right and wrong says that this is the correct thing to do. It is a right thing to do. If somebody worships idols, it is absolutely fine to go out and slaughter that whole people and take their virgin daughters as sex slaves.
Okay,
That is literally the argument you're making.
No, because first of all, even though there are different people who have different religious views, I would not even verbally abuse those people, let alone commit genocide, right? So what I am saying is we have to understand that under the Christian model, all of us before Christ was dead on the cross, we all were worthy of death, right? So that's why you see a specific.
This is irrelevant to the conversation we are having.
Emmanuel. Like, here's the problem, though.
Okay.
Like we've just explained in this whole argument we've gone down is part of the reasoning why I don't accept the Christian model. So, I mean, you can say all you want about under the Christian model, like this is the case, but I don't accept that model for reasons that we just mentioned. The model is inconsistent. The Christian model is terrible. And so that's what we're trying to say is like, we don't accept that. So don't use the framework of the Christian model to say why we need to just let this part slide, because we don't accept your model.
Okay, so under the law of Moses, someone who commits adultery will be stoned to death, right?
This is nothing.
The
example Emmanuel, the Emmanuel gave had nothing to do with the old laws. It was a specific instruction by God separate from those laws. It has nothing to do with the old laws. It has nothing to do with the new covenant coming along and changing those laws. It is a specific example of God giving an instruction separate to those laws. And this is why it's so important. When I asked you originally if you thought our internal model was consistent with God's actions and instructions, it's nothing to do with the old laws. It's nothing to do with the new covenant made by Jesus. God did this. If our internal model is consistent with God, then we should think this is correct. And your original question to us, which we kind of went off, is that, let me have a look, is atheism is an immoral ideology. Now, within atheism doesn't have a selected ideology for morals throughout the thing, because it doesn't relate to that. It's merely a response to a single question. However, if we look at a collective group of atheists, I'm almost certain that we would agree that going out and slaughtering a whole people for idol worship and taking their virgin daughters as spoils of war is an immoral thing to do. This makes collective atheist morality better than the Christian one that you are following. I rest my case. I'm going to let you go.
Yep. Yeah,
And
that's a good
we are
plan.
going to move on.